It's not going to be fun. It's episode 2 of our Harley Davidson Sportster Bobber Build. So we've got our 883 or 1000, whatever it is, 86, 87 4-speed motor here. So we're going to lift this up. We're going to put it in the frame tonight. What's interesting about this is typically you would have a lift and then you would grab it off a table by the jugs and drop it in. It's going to be much easier. But if I'm like most of y'all at home, I'm doing this on the ground and I don't have any type of specialized equipment. So we're going to try to lift this sucker up and we're going to drop it in the frame. So that's the goal. Hopefully we can get it done. I did get it pulled out. But you didn't catch it in episode 1. We got the front tire put on and then we got it on the ground as well as a kickstand installed. So I didn't want to bore you with that, but I did want to get that rolling chassis going so we can get the motor in and get it plumbed and get all the electrical done here. So let's see if we can get this sucker in. Not really too sure how we're going to do this, but oh, it's not going to be fun. It's almost in, like 10 hours later. So now, really the way to get it lined up is you have to use these really heavy duty bolts and it pulls the back of the motor in to the back of the frame. So, and that'll jig it all up there. So, man, I'm sweating. It is hot, hot, hot. But this is what I'm talking about right up in here. That's got to match up and then those will pull that frame in. Doesn't really matter about the front. That'll tighten up once we get that adapter down there and then up here as well. And what's funny is the top ones aren't threaded, but the bottom ones are. It's pretty interesting. It's almost like it should be threaded, but it's not. It's taking forever to get this thing lined up. Alright guys, so we got the motor installed, everything's tightened up here. Don't forget the motor serves as the jig. So if you're actually going to be cutting the frame here in half, you're going to be doing the 2-piece where you bring it together, the one that has the slugs in here. Make sure you use a frame as a jig. Otherwise, when you get it all welded together, go to put the motor in there, it's not going to fit. So you get this thing wired up. So there's a lot of videos on the internet, on YouTube, on how to wire up a hardtail bobber, but none of them are very clear, and most of the ones that I used aren't clear to try to get some references. So let's go over to the board and we're going to draw a wiring diagram. I'm going to show you exactly what you need. I have one made right here already, okay, but I'm going to draw it up for you. That way you can wire up your hardtail bobber, whatever simple Sportster project you got going on. Not much is required for this. You are going to need a relay and a relay harness, as well as your ignition key here and some wiring. I didn't really use anything in particular for the colors. I just used what I had here. So one last thing before we jump over to the wiring diagram, we're going to use the original headlight assembly on this thing. Kind of gives it some character, some older looks, right? So, and plus I didn't want to spend the money on a new one because I'm not going for that fancy shiny look. Well, I wouldn't say we royally screwed up, but we should put the carburetor on before we put the coil bracket on here. So we gotta take it off. Makes it a lot easier to get to. You can do it with the bracket on, but for the sake of time and whatnot, we're gonna get this thing off here. But we're getting close, guys. We're getting real close. Pretty excited. It's been a pretty long project here and there. I haven't documented everything that goes on behind the scenes, but definitely a process. So there's that bracket there. See what I'm talking about? Glad we took that bracket off there so we can get right up in here. Alright, so next up, we got to put on throttle cables. So lucky me, this one's already pretty much threaded on here. We'll slide that on. We got a lot of slack on the cable though. I'm using the original cable surprisingly, but might need to do a little bit of cable management here to get this little situation under control. So yeah, we'll figure that out when that time comes. Not sure why the hell they were so long for the previous owner. The handlebars actually were a lot smaller on here originally, so I have no idea. They probably used what they had. Does that work? Oh yeah, look at that. So tighten that up a little later. And our aftermarket forward controls that we have going on here. Get these bad boys put on, and then this is actually going to go right back in there here. So and now we need the right brake pedal here. Alright guys, so if you're like me and you bought a aftermarket clutch lever, well not the lever but the mount, I don't even know what the hell it's called, that goes on the handlebars here. They're super cheap. Well, the hardware's super cheap, so I went and got some bolts from the hardware store that are going to work a little better here. I found that when I pulled the handle, when I did a mock up on it, completely snapped off, and that's not something that we want going on. Alright, that's good enough for now. So I'm thinking here, start putting on the exhaust here. I got these really wicked Diablo pipes here, which will kind of come down and sit, you know, just like that. So alright guys, so for our final touch here, we're going to put on our oil canister. So if you know, on some of the old Sporties, it's actually on the right hand side, but we're going to go with the cylindrical type here. And got some bungs welded in the bottom here. You got your return, your feed, and then your breather there for the crank. But slide that sucker in right there. Alright guys, so I know I keep mentioning this wiring harness for this bobber here, so let me explain something to you. So I'm going to do a complete separate video on it. It's pretty complicated, so I want to do a pretty in-depth talk about it. Wiring harness is good, it's ready to go, but I'll leave a link for the wiring harness video itself. That way you can get a better understanding of what we're doing. Alright gearheads, well that's a wrap for episode 2 here. We made some pretty good progress. Pretty happy. I'm going to go ahead and do some minor cleaning up here for episode 3. I'm thinking episode 3 we're going to go ahead and get this sucker started here. Really just got to put the wiring harness on, not too much left. I know we did say that we were going to do the wiring harness in this episode, but I'm going to post a separate video right after this on a full detail, about 10 minutes long, so didn't really want to bore you with playing on a dry erase board there, but we'll get that installed and then look forward to episode 3. We're going to get this thing running and I'm hoping we can drive it, so we'll see. Look forward to seeing you next time. Make sure you hit that little button down below there.